My Hero Academia, Chapter 250, Ending. So there's two specific things that I want to talk about in this review, rather than just going over the chapter in its entirety, because I think they're super interesting, so let's get into it. So we're getting some more insight into Toya in this chapter, and there's like 3 bits of information that I think are giving us some clues as to what could have happened with him. So around the time when Rei was admitted to the hospital, this was like after she poured the boiling water on Shoto's face, this is when Toya allegedly kicked the bucket. And then as a result of that happening, her condition got even worse. So Fuyumi saying that makes me think that Rei was already in the hospital when this happened. So let's keep that in mind. And she also says that Natsuo feels that Endeavor killed him. So I don't think he literally thinks that he murdered him or anything like that, but I think this more or less means that Natsuo feels that Endeavor is responsible for his death. So putting all of this together, I think I've come up with what could have happened, or at least had a better idea than I originally had. So if we're going back to the time frame that this is happening, we can assume that Endeavor has already started training Shoto. So I suppose that he just abandoned Toya at this point, because he just put all of his focus on Shoto, because Shoto was the perfect Pokemon that he always wanted. He got the abilities that he was looking for, and obviously Toya didn't have them. So maybe he just put Toya to the side, because we see Toya playing in the yard with Fuyumi and Natsuo, and he's dragging Shoto along. So we know that Endeavor was definitely training Toya, because he says Toya was almost perfect, but he adopted Rei's weak constitution, meaning that he was weak to fire, just the way that Dobby is. When he uses his quirk too much, he starts to melt his skin. We saw it when his fight against Getten, and then we can totally assume that's how he got his scars, and I'll go into that shortly. So we can also assume that he was probably focusing on Toya a lot before, Shoto came along. So I assume that all of that attention and all of the training gave Toya validation, and then suddenly you just take that away, and then you're just pushed off to the side, you're just an afterthought, you're the stepchild all of a sudden. Maybe that made Toya jealous, and he did something that led to his death, and then this is why Natsuo feels that Endeavor is responsible for it. So I originally said that Endeavor just trained Toya too hard, and then that led to his death. Maybe he was trying to make him learn the flash fire, and he overheated, and then they just supposed that he was dead or something. But now I'm thinking that with the information that we have here, maybe Toya tried to improve himself. Maybe he did some of his own training. Or maybe he was overtraining, and then it just led to his own death. Or maybe he fought a villain or something like that. And then maybe he just was presumably dead because of that. Maybe he was just essentially trying to prove himself to Endeavor, because he was, felt abandoned, because all of his focus went to Shoto instead of him. And also the burn marks on Dobby, they resemble the same pattern that Endeavor makes. So maybe he was trying to replicate Endeavor, or maybe just the technique that he was trying to do just involves him using the same pattern that Endeavor has. But they are definitely some insight and clues as to what exactly happened with Toya, because, he definitely is Dobby. It's just a matter of time before it happens, as I always say, and I'm sure 89% of the people, maybe even more, already know that, but we're just looking to him for clues, essentially. But I think, more or less, it's one of the two here. Either he got overtrained, or he kind of just, almost killed himself as a way of proving to Endeavor that he was worthy or something. And that's why Natsuo feels that Endeavor was responsible for it, because if he was just a better dad, then he wouldn't have led to those mistakes and those choices to be made. So now let's go into this new villain revealed by the name of Ending. So first of all, this guy is using the quirk boosting drug, because first of all, we see the pupils of his eyes in that first panel on the second page. And then, once it goes down and he activates the little syringe thing that he's plugging into his neck, he loses his pupils, and then he doesn't have pupils for the rest of the chapter. And this is very similar to that Teller of the Stars, or the guy that can control glass from a couple chapters back. it was heavily implied that he was on the quirk boosting drug as well, because he had lost his pupils, and then they said like his quirk was suddenly like way stronger than what it originally was, and that he just went loco one day out of nowhere. So I assume the same thing is happening here. And that guy was also kind of targeting Endeavor, and the dialogue and the rhetoric that he was spitting was definitely in relation to Endeavor. So whoever is giving these guys the quirk enhancing drug is targeting Endeavor. Like, Endeavor is a target here. So this could be Dobby. That could be the one doing this here, because we are getting some serious focus on Toya, the most focus that we've ever had on him. So it seems like the Dobby reveal is around the corner, and I think it might be revealed that Dobby, through the control, the overall control of the Paranormal Liberation Front, is aiding him with doing this, but he's probably just in control of this operation, and he's focusing on Endeavor. And then once all of these little storylines connect, we're going to get the big reveal there. But let me just go more into this ending guy. So he's like an Endeavor stan, like a psycho stan of him. And apparently 7 years ago, he was taken in by Endeavor. And I think the 7 years has some significance to it, because they wouldn't just say like 7 years for no reason. Like, it's said twice in this chapter. So it's possible that 7 years ago was like when Toya kicked the bucket, allegedly. Maybe that's when that incident happened. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they ever outright say the exact timeline of this. So maybe it's 7 years. I thought it was like 10 years, but I guess I'm wrong. Maybe it is 7 years or something like that. Let me know in the comments. But let's get into this guy's quirk. So I assume this guy has like a paint manipulation quirk, because he's manipulating the road markers, and it's typically made of paint. So if he doesn't have like paint manipulation powers, he has like polymer or resin manipulation, but most likely it's paint, because that's typically what the lanes and the road markers are made out of. And I think that he's able to manipulate it with such like crazy ability at this point because of his quirk boosting drug. I mean, we saw the same thing with the Teller of the Stars, or whatever that guy's name, the glass manipulator guy. Like, he was just ripping glass from the buildings, making spheres and craziness out of it, and he probably couldn't do like anything close to that beforehand. And I assume it's similar with this guy. Like, maybe he can manipulate a paint just like a little bit, but this is like taking it to the nth degree. We also saw it with that dude from the Hisaikai, like how he could just pull those three blades out of his forearm, but then once he took the drug, he was like crazy like sword spears out of his body. So I think we're seeing a similar case here. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I assume that Endeavor's going to take care of this guy pretty easily, and maybe the big three gets involved somewhat, but more or less I think this guy is going to trigger a flashback for Endeavor, and we might see what happens to Toya possibly, because like I said, it might relate to the whole 7-year thing, or when he got this guy, it might have happened that day, or that around that exact time that Toya, the incident happened with him possibly. And then, like I said, this is probably all connected to Dobby, but I think at the least, it's connected to the Paranormal Liberation Front. Like, I don't know if this guy was broken out of jail. He just says released. And I don't know if he was in Tartarus. I don't know if all villains go to Tartarus or not. I don't think they ever made that clear distinction. But if he was in Tartarus, then it's unlikely that he was broken out. So maybe he was just in like a regular quirk villain jail, if that exists. I don't know. But let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. If you liked it, guys, please give it a like. I also have a Patreon. It gives you access to a weekly Q&A. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.